Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. I am joined today. This is a first in the podcast history. I did have one marketing person on back in the day, Jason Hennessy, who's a friend, to talk about his merger. But this is the first time I have a marketing person on our podcast that I am employing, using, thrilled with, and happy to bring to the audience members because I have found legal marketing to be challenging at certain points in my career, as do many people in the legal space. So, welcome to Ron Latz from LegalFenix. Ron is our fractional CMO. And I couldn't be happier with Ron and the company and what he's been doing. So, Ron, welcome to the show, man.
I appreciate the invite, Tom. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. I enjoy working with the firm thoroughly. You bring that New York, that New Jersey, just fire to everything that you do. And someone who was born and raised and currently in New York State, we get along swimmingly. So I'm looking forward to this, man.
Awesome. Yeah. And, look, I've always been very cautious about vendors coming on the show because anytime they come on the show, it's kind of seen as an endorsement, right?
Mhm.
And I've typically stayed away, I guess, because look, I came to the epiphany recently through a mastermind that I'm the problem with every problem in my firm. I own every problem in the firm. And the good part of that is the more I meditate, I realize every answer is also inside of me and within the firm, right? So I had the epiphany probably 6 to 8 months ago. I'm like, why am I trying to manage marketing? I'm not classically trained in marketing. I love marketing, and I think that's a downfall for a lot of firm owners. And then I had the epiphany of I need a fractional CMO, and then I got very nervous because there's a lot of people in that space
Mhm.
with mixed feedbacks, right?
Mhm.
But your name came up time after time after time. I would send a text message to somebody to be like, Ron is great. No hesitations. You can hire him. You should hire him. And that's been my epiphany. Like working with you has been fantastic. Your company's been awesome. So I want to say thank you because you're building something very special the way you're approaching it. So, and I'm looking forward to talking to you and bringing you to the wider audience, right? So, um, give me a little rundown on your history in legal marketing and what brought you to form LegalFenix and why. Why'd you form LegalFenix?
Well, first, thank you for the kind words. I really do appreciate it, as well as, you're a true visionary, Tom. You've got a lot of ideas. You want them to be executed. You want them to be executed with perfection, right? So trying to help you make sense of all the different opportunities and channels and ways that we can drive visibility to the firm in a way that is thoughtful and strategic, right? Can be challenging for someone that isn't as familiar with the space, but you take it in stride. You let the entire team do what they do best, and you're there for the executive decision making. So it's been a great partnership, truly collaborative, and I'm looking forward to everything that we've gotten in store. As far as just how I got into the space, I've been in sales and marketing for 2 decades, and more than a decade and a half of that has been within legal. I started off with Reuters, with FindLaw when they owned it. That was my first foray into working exclusively within the legal segment. And that was at a time where no longer these days, but you could spin up a website with 15, 20 pages of content, do a weekly blog post, maybe get a directory listing, and clients would crush it, right? Depending upon your market, there were still firms out there that doubted even the effectiveness of legal websites, and advertising online still was dominated by a lot of the yellow pages, double truck color binding, right? Like that's where many of the more aggressive PI firms were, putting their stake in the ground, still billboard heavy TV, but digital was still in its nascent stages. And there was just an opportunity there for the early movers to make a big impact. And I was able to develop some incredible relationships with great firms throughout Northern Jersey. And when I had left Reuters, within a year or two, I still had some of my flagship clients, like the ones that I had really strong, not personal, but like just like beyond professional relationships with some of these firms that came back to me and just wanted to know whether or not they should renew, whether or not they should redesign the website, try this marketing product, that marketing service. kind of just, they needed help making sense of which way was up. And, that's when I incorporated the original company that is now today known as LegalFenix. It was actually 2016, September 22nd. I think it was 22nd, 2016, 10 years ago, almost at this point. And I wasn't calling it fractional. I was doing consulting. It was just, hey, let's figure out what you've got to do, how we're going to do it, how you can kind of navigate the vendor landscape. Let's make sure that you're not getting price gouged or the wool pulled over your eyes. Protect your nest egg and your investment. And just, through the course of the past 15 years, like I also had worked with some other service professionals. I also helped rebuild a smaller boutique legal marketing agency where I oversaw sales, marketing, customer success, digital strategy. And I really wanted to come to market with a solution that helped the finger pointing come to an end, where law firms pointed the finger at the agency and the agency would point the finger at the law firm for whatever marketing failures or success that might have lacked. And, through the approach and the model that we have built, I think that, the fact that we don't offer the marketing service, we don't do the SEO, we don't do the paid ads, we're not designing and developing the website, right? Our clients know that we're protecting their best interest. We allow the agencies and the marketing partners to do their thing as best as they can. We help streamline communications. And I think that's done in an effort so that everyone is rowing in the same direction to do what we're all hired to do. And that's make sure that the firm is hitting their growth objectives and their targets.
Right, right. And look, we've been working together, I think it's almost 6 months, and I have just found it to be exactly what I wanted, what I was looking for, but I didn't even know I needed, right? And so anybody that's listening to this, if you think your marketing's stuck and you're the owner of the firm, you might want to look in the mirror because typically that is the cause, right? We're our own choke points. Like I love marketing, so I was in everything and I would throw money at something if somebody said throw money at it. And then at the end of my last marketing relationship, I was like, I wanted strategy first, right? I wanted strategic execution and a plan. But a lot of the plans you get from individual vendors are always these canned things, right? They spit them out, they give the same one to everybody. And what I loved about it was the process you took us through, getting to know me, my voice, you asked me, what do you want to spend your budget on? And then you told me the realities of my budget and you brought me to God on that front saying, look, you want to be an 8-figure firm. Well, this is the budget you're going to be working into, right? And I do feel and find that we're aligned, right? Versus you selling me something. And that's the differentiator, right? One, you don't sell things to people. And two, you have a zero referral basis, not kickback's not the right word, but a zero referral fee type of model where I know a lot of vendors will recommend another vendor because they get a piece of the action and you have a strict, we don't do that policy, right? And so it builds trust. It also builds independence. I know that you're going to have KPIs built out that the vendors are accountable for. I don't have to manage the vendors. Like vendor management is something you actually put out a post. Talk about it here. Your company put out a post yesterday about the 4 or 5 things that you can offer as a fractional CMO, and people need to know what they want coming in, right? So what are those 4 or 5 different, really the pillars of what you will provide?
Yeah, I mean, before you start to figure out like who you want to hire, I think it's important to understand what problem you are attempting to solve. You were specifically talking about some of the canned strategy that might have come from more of a general type of agency, right? Not being legal specific or just basically getting a templated version or regurgitation of somebody else's plan. So if what you really need is more of that strategic guidance, that advisory to put the plan together, to understand, for example, like what percentage of annual revenue are we allocating towards marketing? And then how do we take that and put it across the specific channels that we think are going to drive the visibility and then ultimately the outcomes that we want to achieve? as this investment continues to run its course. So I think as far as that strategic clarity, you knew that in spades. Like you knew exactly where you wanted to go. I'm just here to kind of help you put you on the path in order for us to get there with a lot of our great partners that we've got in place to help us do that. Think another, and again, you talk about the agency neutrality here. There are a lot of different models. That's just the model that I have. There's certainly other fractionals that might not take the kickback or the commission. I just found that that puts us in the best business alignment with our client because they
Right.
don't feel like I'm telling them that they should be doing something that will ultimately line my pockets,
Right.
right? Um, People are going to diversify their revenue streams however they want. I think that there are fractionals out there that disclose that. I just have more of an issue with the ones that aren't disclosing it because there's an
Right.
incentive there.
Right.
That's two totally different things, right? And right, as far as agency neutrality, you know that whomever we were considering, right? That's just we came to that decision together. I'm a lot more biased on the technical side, on the technology side, because we want to put the right tools in place that ultimately are going to get used by the firm, but that's a completely other topic.
Right.
Um,
Right.
to stay on task as far as, again, what you are looking for out of this relationship, whether or not it's strategic guidance, whether or not it's agency neutrality, right? There was a desire here to have someone essentially install like an accountability structure with those marketing partners. You talked about
Yes.
KPIs, like how are we going to determine whether or not we are successful? And I think the biggest miss here is not defining it up front. And you alluded to earlier on before you asked the question about getting some advice or recommendations from people in masterminds or your buddies about like what worked and what doesn't work. And I hate to break it to everybody here, but all marketing works. It's just whether or not it is going to work for you.
Right.
And what you really need to do is get a lot better context. When you're having those discussions in masterminds, at the happy hour, at the ball field, whatever it is, it's trying to understand, well, what were the other things that were complementary to those efforts that might have been driving or helping those results? Because just because someone launched a Facebook campaign or ran ads on Google Ads, in isolation, it's likely not the thing that certainly achieved all those case signups, right? They might have billboard, radio, TV. They could have been investing in SEO for a decade or even 5 years,
Right.
right? A strong referral network. There's so many other things that are coming into play. Strong intake, right? If you're not converting the majority of wanted leads into cases and your intake isn't getting that, you're at the 1 yard line and they can't get it in there, right? Like that's going to make a big difference in how effective or the returns that you make on your marketing, right?
Right.
Um, the other thing is like, what are your internal resources look like, right? Do you have individuals in house that are going to do some of the more guerrilla marketing on the ground, community involvement stuff? We certainly, at least within our model, can help shape that strategy and identify what metrics we're going to track and the outcomes that we want to have. But there's others that will get a little bit more into the weeds than we will. And that's just a different model. They will be the ones that might build out landing pages or write the newsletter or write the social media posts, right? So like you just have to understand where the gaps are, what seats you need filled, and then whether or not that fractional or consultancy is able to fill those gaps appropriately.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I find myself kicking myself a lot because, well, I can't even beat myself up too much because you don't know what you don't know till you know, right? So hopefully people listening to this understand like 25 years I'm doing this. 25 years. And because I loved marketing, I was blind to the fact that I was trying to manage and hold vendors accountable without having any idea of the deep granular data that you need to do it.
Mm.
Right. And I am telling people that are willing to just heed this advice and maybe just pick up the phone and call you or talk to you. I have spent in excess of $600 to $700,000 with no strategy, no accountability for that ROI. I got lucky through most of the years, right? When SEO was a true thing versus what it's morphing into now with AI and all of that, you could get away with a lot different tactics than you can right now that Google changed their algorithm. And I was pulling in 20, 25, 30 cases a month in spite of myself, in spite of the marketing work that was going on, that quite honestly, I don't even want to rate it publicly in case anybody listens to this. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But do yourself a favor. Just have a consultation with Ron. You will have no idea how little you truly know. And the problem is, a lot of firm owners that are business oriented love the business side and are naturally drawn to sales, right? So I think that's part of it. But man, you could have saved me close to $1 million in, and I probably could have achieved my goals a lot faster the way we're set up to scale right now. Again, having two operators that are building an internal infrastructure to support that type of growth is also another thing. But the adding you to the piece of the puzzle was actually it was spawned at the suggestion of my COO Ed, who you know, which was I said, look, I don't want to manage vendors anymore. Can you take this over? And it happened to be some marketing vendors. And he said, I could, but that's going to be a full-time gig. Like, you need me here operationally. And so I went down the path of then, okay, I can't bring on a full-fledged CMO right now. That's what led me to you. I made some calls. I did some digging. I follow you on LinkedIn already. So what I like is that it's not a terribly crowded space as far as I know it, or maybe I just haven't been exposed to it. But I do feel like I found the right guy. I do feel like I found the right guy and the right company. Your company, I think I gave you a compliment. So for those of you that don't know, LegalFenix is an EOS company. Ron was flying out to his quarterly meeting, and we were talking. He was in the airport. We were talking. I said, Ron, go and tell your team the following. And Ron, you know me. I'm a no bullshit guy.
I know.
I said, do me a favor and tell your team, I have never been so happy to work with a vendor in all my days because of the way you guys run. Your responsiveness, your automation level, your data tracking, the continuity of communication through all of your tools, hyper responsive. And I can already see where our scaling is going, and marketing is a key part of it. So while I found you too late, I'm just glad I found you at this point.
Hindsight's 2020, Tom, and that's done by design as well as that operating cadence, right? Not only do we run it, but all of our clients are either on EOS or they're running some version of it, or they're on Fireproof. They have some sort of cadence where leadership is meeting on a weekly basis. We're making sure that everybody has a number, right? You're looking at your scorecard or your Jumbotron. You've got your rocks or your flames, your 90-day projects, right? And we all make sure that everyone is in lockstep so that we just know what we are all doing. And then we come together, we assess, we reevaluate, and then when we got to make changes, we make changes that we're all on board with.
Yeah, it's been pretty seamless. I know sometimes I'm not even on the meetings. You're on them with the COO, but he's interacting with you on the regular because he's making sure our infrastructure will support what we're about to launch. So you worked inside agencies, you worked alongside firm owners. At this point, everything's changing so fast. If you got firm owners that are predominantly listening to this, what's one thing that you would tell them, like, hey, right now you need to be aware of this in legal marketing?
Well, listen, clearly the pace at which AI is impacting not only the technology, but the way in which we market, as well as enabling firms to do a lot more with a lot less. I think that, you'd be remiss if you're not taking that into account and trying to deploy it in a way that can help you internally and operationally. Not saying necessarily take away all the legal work, but there are certain things that someone like Ed or a COO or a fractional COO is able to do and leverage in order to make you more efficient with your time. I think that's pretty much table stakes. There are certain things that you can leverage these tools for, just like us, right? I have a team that is across the country. We're leveraging a CRM tool. We've got call recording, a project management tool. Everyone is in their calendar, in their email. We've got Slack. So the fact that we can kind of tie all of that together into Claude Cowork basically, and
Right.
streamline like information like give me the recap for this week. What can we summarize as far as like for the firm to know the things that we have accomplished, right? That's just that's operations, right? As far as marketing is concerned, right? You've got all these large language models and answer engines. You've got AI mode with Google and AI overviews. I think what is really happening here is the resurgence of firms that have to and have been neglecting a focus on brand, right? So, you're out there producing content on LinkedIn. You've got this podcast. You have a newsletter, right? You're tapping into your referral network, right? The other lawyers that you are working with that can send you cases. Those are the cases that you're acquiring at a lower acquisition cost. It's not
Absolutely. Yeah.
the investments that you've got in channel, right? So
Yeah.
what we want to do is put firms in a position in which they are capitalizing more on that brand search and not becoming reliant upon the personal injury near me or car accident lawyer
Right.
Gia, right? Because those head terms are very expensive, right? But the way, and again, I'm very skeptical of some of like the AI tracking tools and how frequently you are being mentioned, just because the output is so personalized and custom to your previous chats and history and behavior, right? That I don't find them overly reliable. We can pick up some signals from them, but as far as, you know, doing things that will enable you to be mentioned by them, it's marketing 101 stuff. It's no
I
like
was just going to say, yeah, it really in my mind at this point, because you can make yourself crazy, right? If you think going to ChatGPT and asking who's the best PI lawyer and it doesn't know that it's talking to you, you're kidding yourself, right? So I'm not going to take comfort from that. It really comes down to, are you making yourself visible to a wide enough audience that when people are looking you up, that you will randomly show up in AI. I don't know that there's companies out there now. Well, let me ask you. A lot of SEO companies are pivoting to we're going to teach you uh, AI, right? What's it called? GEO or everywhere,
AEO.
optimization.
Yep.
Is there a trick to AI optimization, like optimizing so you show up in AI? I mean, other than best practices that you would be doing anyway as part of normal SEO/marketing, right? You want to be on directories. Everybody knows the legal directories are a thing. But anybody's like saying, hey, I've got this thing I'm selling. We know the secret sauce. Is that real?
No, I think for the most part, it's a lot of snake oil. I'm not saying that there are certain things that we can do to put ourselves in a better position to show up, right? You mentioned the legal directories. The reason why the legal directories are often so prominent in their placement within answer engine output is because the answer engines are relying upon other signals to basically cite the source in which they are telling you. I noticed that this individual was listed on Super Lawyers or Best
Right.
Lawyers or has a 10.0 on Avo, right? They are picking up other information that they have consumed within their data set in order to provide you with a response, right? Around who the best this or that lawyer is, right?
Right.
That's the way that you are going to increase the visibility in those answer engines there is by, again, if you are being cited by multiple sources or being published
Right.
by reputable publications and journalists are interviewing you and you've got news segments and you are doing all of the things in order for people to be searching, Tona Law or Thomas Tona Lawyer, right? You will increase the likelihood that if someone is
Right.
searching for the service that you provide when they are injured due to the negligence of others, that you might show up.
Right.
Now, right, like that's hard to say we're going to guarantee that you're going to get this placement. I really I don't think that's a gray area. I don't think that is necessarily possible at this point.
Yeah, and
Um,
look, I think that hammers home exactly what I'm talking about. So law firm owners spend a tremendous amount of time and money trying to get the cases in the door, right? It's not just personal injury, it's family lawyers that you're working with as well. And but simultaneously there's a feeling of lack of control, right? When I used to sign a contract before you were in the picture, because again, I want people to understand the value of a fractional CMO of your quality. Before you were in the picture, I would be like, oh my God, leads are down. It's got to be my SEO. I got to look at who I'm using and probably make a change. And you came in and you're like, listen, we don't make changes to any of the vendors you're using. We evaluate them first, right? We evaluate them. We see what's working. We see what could be done better. Are they manageable? Will they answer to somebody who knows what to ask and who knows how to hold them accountable? And that's a big thing because a lot of places won't, right?
Mhm.
That was what I saw, as we were scaling this thing. So how do you message to law firm owners who are stroking checks that are 5-figure checks, multi 5-figure checks a month on marketing, but have that feeling of really like loss of control or not? I liken it to going to buy a car with a blindfold on with a checkbook in your hand, right? Like you don't, for me, I just didn't understand it enough. And I was like, I can't dedicate myself to becoming an expert in SEO or social to the point where I actually can manage it. Like, so,
Mhm.
like, what do you tell owners? At what point does it make sense from a budgetary perspective to bring on a Ron Latz, LegalFenix?
Well, I'll answer the first question, then I'll go to the budget question around
Sure.
like evaluating those agencies, right? I can't come in and make sweeping changes across the entire vendor pool without knowing what was the task at hand? What were they supposed to be doing? What was the target that they were given? What is the budget? What's been the timeline? Let me look at the data. Let me try to tie that back to the business outcomes and the cases that were acquired. Because if there is the possibility, which I do run into this pretty frequently, that the agency's doing a good job, and I just then have to have a conversation with the firm to say,
Right.
listen, you're missing 20 to 30% of your phone calls. Your wanted to conversion of signed cases is well below nationwide benchmarks, right? We've got to, we're significantly underinvested in this channel given the competitive landscape. I can then put myself in the role of being completely neutral. Yeah, in that instance, I am defending the agency because maybe they didn't do a good job articulating the value that they were providing, but they weren't sticking up for themselves in the regard that like that firm probably should have been investing 2 to 3x based off of what their expectation was,
Right.
right? And I've walked into situations where we get brought on, we're on the kickoff call, and they say, Ron, I want you guys to clean house. And I just ask for time. Just let me have some time. Let me talk to these individuals. I speak their language. They're going to share some of the gripes that they're having with the firm, right? And I can pretty much bridge the gap to say, listen, agency, I'm not going to do anything that you're doing, right? I'm not going to sell those products. So rest assured, I'm not trying to take scope out. But then
Right.
I can go over to the firm and I could say, listen, right? Like all the things that I rattled off, whether it's approvals or not answering the phone or gaps in intake, so that we can all just kind of reset and then move forward from there, right? And
Yeah.
there's really situations in which the firm was to blame, and again, where the agency was to blame. But I'm not here. I'm not here to point any fingers. I want to make sure that we're all again aiming at the same target, right?
You're spitting a lot of wisdom, and so let's talk about a couple of things and unpack it. One, spend. So I'll give you an example of, and again, I learned this through my travels with you, really. But I was talking to a firm owner, and I said, "How much are you spending on SEO?" They were like $750 a month. I'm like, "You are lighting that on fire." Just do me a favor, like either hire Ron Latz or just stop paying the SEO company because you are literally it's you. There is nothing you can buy for $750 in the legal marketing space from an SEO company. Like, what could they be doing other than sending you an invoice every month, right? And so you have to talk about and this is for the firm owners who don't know yet, but you have to talk about the realities of the legal marketing space, how much it's changed, even since AI changed the algorithm in Google in December of last year, right? December 2024, I think it changed.
Well, there's ongoing core updates, but the one that you're referring to about your situation, yes, but that, one had
Right,
just recently rolled
right.
out.
So,
Continue.
so, so talk about the realities of case acquisition costs and how much they've changed, even in the last 12 months.
Sure. Well, to your point, at $750 a month, it's probably a very cookie cutter approach. Maybe they're handling hosting and maintenance, which is going to be, maybe $100 to $300 a month. And then if you've got an account manager, right, that individual's got to get paid, and they could be putting together a report and maybe some content. I think the point that you were trying to make is, depending upon the market and the practice area, which I don't know, so I can't speak directly to it, it is very likely that those dollars could be repurposed or allocated somewhere else that can drive a better outcome, maybe within referrals, referral networking, community involvement, things like that. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, like, I don't know that particular situation.
Right.
And then the follow up question was again.
Well, the point being that people have to be realistic in their spend.
Oh,
And I remember when I was talking to somebody yesterday that we both know, and he was like, "Man, if I could go back," and I said, "Listen, I used to pay sub 1,000 for."
acquisition costs.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So give people kind of a reality check right now about cost of acquisition to play digital marketing game. And digital marketing covers a lot of things, but there has to be a certain reality to the benchmarking of budgeting, right? And so, what have you seen to the? Let's talk about Google specifically, because that you can talk about. I mean, they were. I watched them climb over the years. It was sub 1,000, then it was 1,000, then it was 1,500, then you were paying $2,000. Talk about acquisition costs on Google right now. Average cost of acquisition.
Sure. I mean, again, with Google, we're specifically going to be talking about organic, local, and your paid search options, which will be Google Ads or LSAs. And if you are in a major market, right, if you're in Manhattan, LA, Chicago, Miami, I mean, acquisition costs continue to rise.
Yeah,
In LA, if you're acquiring a case somewhere between the $4,000 to $5,000 mark, you're probably in that range. But again, it matters. It depends on so many other factors what you are paying, because as you continue to invest, the incremental cost to acquire a case is going to rise. It's going to keep going up. So depending upon channel mix, depending upon the competitive landscape, right? Even local, Tom, you've got firms out there in some of these major markets that have 1, 2, 3,000 plus reviews. They're not only dominating the map pack, but they are the ones that are likely also showing up consistently in spots 1 or 2 on LSAs. And if they're invested in ads, they've got likely, right, like almost 6-figure monthly budgets, because they want to saturate and occupy as much real estate as possible on the first page of Google. The other thing, when you think about, for example, acquisition costs within LSA, right, like, the volume game is there. If there is a firm that is consistently taking most of those prospects, Google's in the business of maximizing revenue per impression. They're going to
right,
want to give the firm that is always answering the call within minutes or seconds,
right,
that is marking those as booked, because it puts money in their pocket, right? They're listening on those calls to make sure that you are giving an incredible client experience. You're assuring that person that they called the right place, that this is exactly what you do. You're exercising empathy, and then you're booking those leads. Because if not, right, if you are the firm that is declining 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10 of those LSAs, Google's not going to want to continue to give you those at bats, because it's not putting money in their pockets. Now,
right.
costs are going to range, right? It really depends. It depends upon how many you are qualifying, how quickly you are answering and responding to the phone. Are you going into the back end of the LSA platform and creating that feedback loop and letting them know, right, like, this is qualified, and rating those leads? So there's so many factors that are coming into play, and that's just LSAs, right? Paid
Yeah.
search, yes, average cost pers are going to continue to rise, and there's a balance there. as far as determining like what is our budget allocation for brand versus non-brand. Do we compare that to the cost of LSAs? Because LSAs now offer you the opportunity to look at your direct search, right? So you can back out now how many times people out of all the LSAs that come in, how many people searched for the brand versus the category search, which is your non-brand, right?
Right.
We have clients that have significant dollars, right? Heavy portions, 20 to 30% of budget going towards some of their branded efforts. And we see within LSAs that, again, I'm a smaller shop, right? I'm not like some of these agencies that have 100 or 200 clients, right? We're looking at a much smaller subset of data, but the firms that are investing heavily in brand, we see the direct correlation within LSAs that their direct search LSAs are significantly higher than the firms that are not investing in brand, right?
Okay.
And if we can compare the costs, if they are in a paid search channel like Google Ads, right? How much are they paying for that branded click versus how much are they paying for the direct search on
So
LS?
just because you said a word that I really like, context. Just for context for the listeners, when you say somebody's heavily invested in brand,
Mhm.
quantify that on a monthly basis. Just give ballpark. Ballpark. What are we talking about? Just for that one in-channel spend.
That's like the one that I'm referencing there. That's like about, again, 25 to 30%. They're, without divulging anything, they're about a $5 to $6 million shop.
How much are they spending
Annual
on?
re- annual revenue. So
Right.
20, yes.
So how much are they spending on that branded search spend for LSA monthly?
Around 1,500 a week.
A week. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. So what I like about what we're talking about, because we're getting granular, is for anybody that's listening to this, let's say for a second you run a PI shop, because that's what I know. Um, is there a formula you apply for budgeting? If somebody calls you up, says, Ron, I just settled a big case. I want to put some money into marketing. I've kind of been all over the map. I want to be a $5 million a year firm, $10 million a year firm. What percentage should I be spending and where should I spend it? Now, I know that varies, right, by firm and owner and what their comfort level is with certain mediums, but what percentage of gross revenue should people be spending? And if you have aspirations for being, let's say, a $10 million firm, what does that spend need to be to produce the amount of cases you need?
I just had another post on this within the past week about
All right,
allocating.
good, good.
So one of the biggest things that is going to come into play here is like your timeline, right? Do you need cases tomorrow or can you survive? And can we look at some long-term investments because I want to balance both short and long-term plays first and foremost, right? If you need to keep the lights on and you are looking for cases tomorrow, right? You're looking for more performance marketing channels, right? And still, even if you're looking at Google Ads, right? I think that you should be willing and ready to invest and sustain that investment for at least 6 to 9 months to determine how well it is working and whether or not you should double down or pull out of that market and reallocate those dollars. I think generally speaking, if you are comfortable with maintaining the status quo, and there are plenty of firms out there, right? Like investing anywhere between 5 to 8% of your annual gross towards marketing to ensure that your client experience is world class, that you are nurturing and maintaining referral connections and networks, right? Doing the networking events, the happy hours, going to lunch, getting the coffee, grabbing the drink, doing the dinners, right? To maintain those relationships. Maybe a little bit of swag just to make sure that you've got some branded stuff, like and you're trying to just, again, you're maintaining, you're not aggressively growth minded. You're within that 5 to 8% range. If you want some moderate growth and you're, I don't know, somewhere between 10 to 15 compound annual in growth, like you're looking at somewhere between the 10 to 18 range or 10 to 15% range. And if you're very aggressively growth mining, you're in between 20 to 30%. Right. But those are all very different business models. The
Right, right.
infrastructure that you need, especially on not only intake, but the legal services and client services delivery model, they are completely different across all 3 to 4 of those buckets that I just rattled off.
Right.
You see all these advertisements out there, right? The guarantee of 150 cases in a given month, or right, like sub $1,000 acquisition costs. And it's just like, do you like the for me to come to you, Tom, and say, hey, I'm going to get you 150 cases starting on 4/1, like the work that would have to go
Not
into.
only that, I mean, you literally need X number of attorneys coming on every month to service that every other month. Let's say at 150 cases, you need a new attorney if you're signing all 150, let's say you're signing all 150, the infrastructure demands are astronomical. The math will never math on these lead gen companies that are promising that stuff. It's ridiculous. You have to scale into it. That's why they call it scaling, because otherwise you're just going to implode. As
Sure.
somebody who I have broken intake more times than I care to even admit, with hitting on a marketing idea that just hit, and all of a sudden I've got my entire team doing intakes. Then I hire a dedicated intake person. Infrastructure needs and operational needs are so real, because otherwise what you're faced with is upset clients, upset leads, upset intakes. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces to the marketing puzzle,
Yeah.
right? To the growth puzzle. So I want to ask you your opinion. I have an opinion on it, but you've talked to a lot of firm owners.
Mhm.
Why do most firm owners struggle to evaluate marketing performance, in your opinion?
I think because for the most part, success isn't really being defined at the onset of the engagement. There's a firm that will go to an agency, and the agency will basically say, our product or our solution or the channel that we focus on can help you meet your goals, right? Because that's how they get paid. And the law firm hears that and they think, maybe here's my silver bullet, or this is what I've been waiting for, or I've been promised the world. And they jump into it because they've been kind of sold on someone else's success and someone else's metrics and someone else's firm that they are not building, that they kind of, it's not a shiny object syndrome, but listen, they want to believe that this is going to work the way that it has been promised to them. It's just, unfortunately, that's not always the case. So if you do step back, one of the ways that you can pressure test that is just see if they're not willing to sell you the product that they sell, right? Like the model that we have, like, we are not for everyone, and that's by design. And I will let people know listen, there are definitely a lot of benefits of working with us. There's also some drawbacks, right? And I think every agency, right, there's going to be pros and cons to their model. The ones that do tend to push back and say, hey, listen, if we were able to deliver this as we have promised and the expectation that we have set, would your team be able to handle that? Would you, right? Like there are instances that we have even put ourselves in, right? Like, I don't bat 1,000. I enter into client engagements that haven't worked out before. One of them that comes to mind, and we still parted on amicable terms here. They didn't have any infrastructure put into place. No CRM, no call tracking, no matter management system. They were still in the middle of an implementation, right? So I was like, I still think that we can help in a different way, right? Like the referral marketing, right? The newsletters, the community involvement. There are things that we can do to get our name out there, right? And it just, for whatever reason, the implementation continued to drag on and drag on. And the firm wanted us, and this was in a very competitive market. They wanted to jump into ads, which is music to my ears, Tom. When firms do want to spend and they're willing to look at marketing as experiments and test things out, there's nothing more that a marketer loves than to hear that they're willing and open to do that, right? But I can't go and spend $50,000 to $100,000 a month on ads with no way to track whether or not we have converted that, because
And
it
no
is.
infrastructure. No infrastructure.
So, we just decided it was best to part ways until those tools and systems were put into place. And if and when that time comes, they want to re-engage, we can open the lines of communication again, right? But that's the agencies that I know because I'm referring them all business, right?
Right.
And I see them say on the consulting side and on the fractional side, they are asking for that information. They are asking the questions about the infrastructure and the CRM and the call
See,
tracking.
that's important. That's really important because what you just said, there's a lot of granular advice, I think, that comes from this that I'm hoping is simple enough for people to unpack. Let's say that they're at 1 million or 2 million in revenue. If your firm doesn't have an operations person, and by operations person, I mean somebody trained in operations,
Mhm.
either director level, minimum director, or senior operations manager level, then you probably can't even get to a Ron fractional CMO point because you won't have somebody that can build out the systems, build out the automations and the technology end to end that you need. So I love that from an ethics point, you actually told that client, look, just not now, right? Maybe in the future, but not now, because without this other stuff in place, your hands are tied on so many different levels, right? Like I already had the realization that I needed to level up operations, right?
Mhm.
Because I felt the operational fires. I saw every problem as an operational problem that I couldn't fix. And I hate operations. So I want it out as soon as possible. And when I say I hate it when I do it. I love it when 2 experts or 3 experts in my firm are doing it. I'm all about it. I'm like, systematize this, automate that. Good, as long as I don't have to oversee it or create the system. So,
Mhm.
really, what you're talking about is a healthy law firm marketing ecosystem,
Mhm.
right? Talk about, to you, what's the ideal scenario to step into that's a healthy law firm marketing ecosystem and the different components and how they, kind of tie together.
I distill it down to 3 components. It's the people, it's your process, and then it's the technology. And what most firms do is they kind of work it backwards and they allow the technology to dictate the process, and then they try to force that process onto the people. It's a simple technology like implementation framework, right? When my time in like enterprise sales, where it was a service and a technology, and we were helping companies like manage a lot of their contractors, and this was just a principle that we would always do when we would implement the tool and then integrate it with others. You've got these great quality people that you have hired, right? And without a standardized process, you're going to try to put the circle into the square into the circle, whatever the analogy is, but you're not doing it in the way that you normally would operate, right? Whether it's intake, whether it's client services, whether it's your pods, whatever it may be, the people are the one doing this day in and day out, right? Especially with technology builds and integrations. Like if you aren't talking to your people about the way that they use the tool, the way that they need to use the tool, and you're just making a decision in a vacuum as the owner saying, oh, I like this because it's shiny and I want to use it.
Right.
If you're not canvassing all stakeholders to ensure that this is what they need, how do they use it? Why are they doing this? Is there a better way to your adoption is going to suffer greatly,
Right. Right.
right? So understanding the way that the people are working and hopefully having a standardized operating procedure and a process in which, or a framework in which they work in, and then seeing how the tool or the technology can help improve it or make you more productive or more efficient to get the information out of the other end so that everybody is working as a well-oiled machine, right? Like that's the entire marketing ecosystem. And you can apply that to not only just marketing, your intake, your legal services, just your operations, because there's tools for everything these days,
And those
right?
are actually, understanding scaling, because so many people are using that word right now, and understanding
Of course.
scaling as a science. It's a science if you actually study it, which I have been for the last 2 years because of where we're at. I now have such a different understanding, right? The same pillars you just brought up, which are people, processes, and technology. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's a 9-figure hitter in the home security world. He's part
Mm,
of my one of my masterminds, and he was giving a lecture or a conference on mergers and acquisitions. He said mergers only accounted for about 20 to 25% of his growth. No single needle mover was above the right people in the right seats, A and B players. People have to go back, firm owners go back to focusing on the core basics: people, processes, technology. I would add two components for scaling, which is finance and marketing. And that you were the last piece of that puzzle for me. I had lined up financing and made sure all of our financing was in good shape. I have a team of A and B players. I'm super proud. It's never looked better from an infrastructure standpoint. You met a lot of them.
mhm.
And the processes I knew we were weak on. That's why I brought in the people that you've met on the system side. So that is tremendous. And I don't know if you get the same vibe, but I get the vibe from scouring the internet like I do. It's where I do a lot of my anecdotal research. I would hazard a guess that most law firms that have disjointed technology, because we all jumped on the technology bandwagon first with case management, right?
Mhm.
Clio or whatever. So I would hazard a guess that most softwares are not even being used to about 15% of their potential. They're not being used correctly unless you have operators in there that build it end to end where it talks to each other seamlessly. And like you said, follows the customer journey all the way through from the first call till the client dies or unsubscribes from your system,
Mhm.
right? So that's important. That's the ecosystem you're talking about.
Especially related to the technology example that you were giving there, that is such a big change management effort that you need someone internally championing that charge so that adoption doesn't fail, right?
Right.
Like, especially even within LegalFenix, like I'm not going to expect other people to do the things that I'm not willing to do. So if I'm not in the project management tool, if I'm not in the CRM, if I'm not doing those things, it's hard to hold other people on the team accountable to do it, right? It's very simple and basic. You got to lead by example. And when you are in that situation purchasing like these tech projects, they are not cheap. They involve multiple iterations. They involve a lot of different integrations with a lot of different tools. There's so many different moving pieces, right? But you've got the individual internally too, actually, that are leading that charge, that are providing feedback, that are basically helping the partners architect the solution so that it is going to be used the way that the firm operates,
Right.
right? And as long as they then teach and train and mentor and guide those individuals on an ongoing basis, because technology is improving, they're getting new bells and whistles, there's new ways to do things, there's new versions and operating systems that you all have to kind of keep up with in order to squeeze as much as you can out of that tool, right? Like that also ties back into intake. Like, how frequently are we training these individuals? Are we
Right.
telling them the client's story so that when they are on the phone, they can bring up the fact that you helped John Doe and you helped Mary about this particular case or that particular case so that they are selling on your behalf? Like, bring them into those conversations, right? I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but it all ties back into ensuring that your team is aware of all the things that are going on, and if you want them to continually use the tools and adopt them so that you can squeeze as much value as you can out of them, they've got to be in the know. And they have to understand that this is the way that we do it. This is our process. This is our framework, because this is how we provide just extraordinary results for our clients.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, you hit on so many things again. As you were saying it, I was thinking in my head: training, 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 teaching, learning, and as somebody who never really did that before, we have a whole new software suite, as you know, right, from beginning to end. I've been taking extensive training myself because I am a user of it when I'm out in the field and where I need to enter data and from my phone or whatever. And I think that, you know, that is tremendously insightful for anybody that's listening to this. Not only do you need to have the ability to hammer out your operations and infrastructure the right way, master the tools that you want other people to master, right? And give them a training and onboarding mechanism, but have an accountability structure too. You need somebody in your organization, you or somebody else, to make sure that people don't stray from the path, because they will if you're not constantly reiterating, rediscussing it on a regular basis. So yeah, there's a lot there to this marketing ecosystem. But if you want to play a big game, then you've got to play the game bigger. You just have to do it that way. And look, again, I think so. Ron, are you? Because I know we'll come to the end. I want to be respectful of your time. Are you available for project-based consulting at this point? Is your organization still doing that? Like, if somebody says, "Hey, listen, I don't have a massive budget. I'd like to hire you to evaluate this channel, this vendor for me," and what you see. Like, are you available for that type of stuff? You guys available for that?
I've really pared down a lot of the one-on-one and individual consulting, since most of the business now is primarily the fractional engagements, but I'm pretty much working through and offboarding consulting engagements. I'm only taking really about like 3 to 5 of those at this point.
Okay. Okay.
Um, because most of the business right now, I'm building out the infrastructure, looking for the next fractional CMO that will bring into
Right.
tier, an operator, the similar path that, you've been on already. We're trying to put those pieces together. We've been very fortunate, very, very lucky. I'm very grateful that, I've been in the space for a long time, and I've been able to bring some people on board that, just like you, proud of the people and proud of the product.
Yeah, you've got great people in the organization, and your processes are tight. They work. So I would say to anybody, if you're spending five figures or more a month on marketing, you may want to reach out to Ron and see if it could be spent better, if it's time for you to scale up depending on your goals. I have to tell you, so you've got two really big raving fans, me, Ed in my organization. Like, he just can't say enough great things about working with you. How ease of use, frictionless it is to work with your company. We've worked with a lot of vendors in the past. So I would also tell people that are listening to this, follow Ron on LinkedIn, and follow LegalFenix on LinkedIn, because they are putting out really, really good legal marketing content. Like, the content is great. I know you're doing most of it yourself. You're doing it all yourself, I think, right?
Everything is me on LinkedIn.
It's
Yep,
great. It's great. And do you have a newsletter
I
as
do.
well?
I
So what
do.
I'll do is, if you send us your links, I'll make sure that the editor puts everything in the show notes, because I literally can't consume enough of your content. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it, Tom. I
No,
appreciate it.
no, man. Anytime, anytime. And anytime there's a new legal marketing trend coming out, you want to talk about it, I'd love to have you on again, man. Thank you for coming on.
We'll do it. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Ron, thank you.